Kal Kadosh, Boker Or, I wanted to share with you an incredible shiur which has to do with respecting in-laws. We started this already on Parashat Yitro when it spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu respecting his in-laws, his father-in-law, and now we're going to continue this week as well. So if you remember, the way that we started off was as follows. We had a pasuk in Parashat Yitro where it said that Yitro comes and he advises his son-in-law and he tells him, by the way, I'm coming, right? I'm coming. And also your wife is coming and your two children. So obviously, if the father-in-law is going to tell you, listen, I'm coming, and the wife and the children, and how did he even get the message over? We actually spoke about it on Shabbat, that it could be that according to one shita, he had to write it on an arrow. And he had to shoot the arrow into the machaneh, because since they had the Aranei Kavod, which are the clouds of glory surrounding them, not anybody could just come inside and greet Moshe Rabbeinu. So Mamash, even how he even got to him this message, right, with a courier, right, was incredible. But fine, we think that who does Moshe Rabbeinu by obvious? Who's he going to come and go and visit? So if a guy has a good shalom bayit, he's going to say, no, I'm going to go out for my wife, right? But if not, he's going to say, my kids are coming, so I'm going to run to go and see them. Here, what does Rashi say? What does the Torah say? Vayetze Moshe likat choteno. He went out to his father-in-law, right? And then vayishtachavu lo, right? Vayishtachu lo, he bows down to him, he kisses him, vayishlu ish l'Yerushalom. So Rashi says something incredible. Vayetze Moshe, kavod gadol nitkabed yitro beotasha. You know what a kavod Yitro got at that moment? Because imagine Moshe Rabbeinu's coming out. So who goes out? Aharon. Aaron is going out. Who's going to come out? Nadav Avihu, right? And the children. Everyone comes and they see the entourage. What happens? Everybody starts coming out to greet Yitro. So Rashi says, "Vayishtacho vayishaklo." En yodea mishtacha velemi. I don't know who bowed down to who. When it says Ish lere'ehu, who's called Ish? Tefila leMoshe Ish haElohim va'Ish Moshe anav meod. Who is Ish? Moshe Rabbeinu. So therefore, obviously, Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that bowed down to his father-in-law and he kissed him. We will actually see that that is the shita of Rav Ovadia, not the bowing down, but for sure says Rav Ovadia Yosef that there's the concept of even kissing the hands of your father-in-law, derech kavod vikar. Rav Ovadia and Shuti Chavedat. So just to understand what we're talking about. But fine. So what happens from here? Says the Mechilta, Mikan amru shiye adam muchan lichvod chamiv. Right? What does that mean? Says the Mechilta. Mechilta is a midrash on Parashat on Sefer Shemot. He comes and he says, from here, from this story in the Torah, what are we learning? That you should respect your father-in-law. It doesn't say chayav. It says sheyeh muchan. You should be fitting to respect your father-in-law. Last Shabbat, if you remember, on last Friday and last Nishma, we spoke about the Hemek Davar, which is the Netziv Mivolozhin, that he went and he said that he went dafka to go out for the father-in-law, not for the wife and the children, because you're obligated to come and to respect the father-in-law, and therefore again we bring down this Mechilta. Fine, another Mekor, right? Are you obligated to respect your father-in-law? We're going to go to a pasuk in Shemuel Aleph Perek Kavdalet chapter 24, pasuk Yud Aleph. Says the pasuk, Ve'avi, my father, re'e gam re'e. See, but it says double, right? Re'e gamre, knaf milcha. Look at the corner of your garment. Why? Because I cut off the corner of your garment and I didn't kill you. So you see, I have nothing against you, and I didn't do anything. David HaMelech is being pursued from his father-in-law. We already mentioned last time, if you remember, he wasn't the first one that the father-in-law wanted to kill him. Who else? Yaakov and Lavan. Lavan was running after him to kill his son-in-law, Yaakov. So here's another one, right? David HaMelech is being pursued by Shaul. Shaul HaMelech wants to kill David. David is his son-in-law. He wants to kill him. And what happens? He comes and he says, Avi re'e gam re'e, my father. He calls him his father. And he says, look, I could have killed you. I cut off the corner of your... I could have killed you, but I didn't. I have nothing against you. So then Shaul just went. He said, okay, fine, you're right. He left him alone and he left. Right? Again, he came back again, because remember, he tried pursuing David a few times and he was going to kill him. Right? But he left him alone this time. Now, what happens is that there's a Yalkut Shimoni. Yalkut Shimoni is a midrash, and this obviously midrash is on Shemuel. So the midrash says there's actually a machloket. Who is Avi referring to? So it says, the first shita says, Amale David va'avi re'e gamre, mikan shechayav adam, right? Bichvod chamiv, kichvod aviv. From here you learn you're obligated. It's a chova, chayav adam, right? In the respect of your father-in-law, like your father. So he says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, va'avi re'e is to Shaul. Gamre is to Avner, right? Avner was the general at the time. So he says, Avi, my father. Who's my father? Shaul. Gamre. But the Rabbanan, they argue. Rabbanan Amre, Vavi Re'eh, he said to Avner, because he's Aviv Torah. He's the father in Torah. That's why he called him my father. Gamre is to Shaul. So according to Rabbanan, I don't know if you just realize, it comes out that you're not obligated, maybe, Bemet, to respect your father-in-law like your father, because at the end of the day, who was Avi? It wasn't Shaul. It was who? It was how do you call it? It was Avner, that he was a father in Torah, but Shaul was not like that. So listen to this question. There's a rabbi, his name was Rabbi Chiel Michal Levi Epstein in the Aruch HaShulchan. He comes, he says the follows. He says a person is obligated to. He says, I don't understand the proof. Why? Elisha also called Eliyahu an Avi. He went, he said, Avi, Rechav Yisrael Parashav. Meaning, if you're going to tell me because he called his father-in-law my father, Elisha Navi called his rabbi Avi, so what? Because of that, you're obligated. What's going on? So he says, not only that, Shaul is king. So maybe he's calling him my father because it's like your highness. You understand? It's like, so it's not because of the father-in-law. Don't bring me a proof from the father-in-law. I think maybe it's just something else. She says, maybe the answer is, says Aruch HaShulchan, that since Shaul was running after him to kill him, and he still called him Avi, he still called him my father, maybe because of that, that's the proof that you still have to come and respect your in-laws, even if they're causing you suffering. So even if your father-in-law or mother-in-law are going to come and they're going to cause you suffering, you're still obligated to respect them. Where did you learn that from? From David HaMelech. But Rav Yisrael Yosef HaKohen Rappaport and Yosher Harai come and he says, I don't understand Aruch HaShulchan. Why? Listen to this. He says like this. When I come and I use the terminology Avi or Aviv, my father, it can only be two people. A biological father, meaning my real father that he gave birth to me, or my rabbi. Aviv Batorah. Because Rav Muvhak, like it says, Veshinantam Levanecha. Who is Shinantam Levanecha? You have to teach to your children. Elu Talmidim. Says those are your students. Your students are like your children. Do you know there's a famous question brought down in Halacha that if a person does not have children, what he should do is he should teach children. Because when he teaches the children, it's considered that those are his children. And therefore, for a Keilu, that this is what's going to be, that it's his children. Very good. So he comes and he says, according to this, right, like the Rabbanan, it's going like the Rabbanan and the Kuchimoni, that Aviv is Aviv Batorah. Aviv Beoraita. Aviv Beoraita means Aviv Batorah. So it comes out that anybody that's going to come and learn Torah, that's fine. What about a king? He says, king, you don't use the word Avi. You know what you use? Adoni, my master. Meaning, when you say Avi, Avi is to your father or to your rabbi. When you say to a king is Adoni. So therefore, he comes and he says, the fact that David HaMelech called him Avi, that's why you understand that it is an obligation to respect your father-in-law like your father. Because if you're going to try to tell me, no, but Shaul was a king, so he should have called him Adoni. And the truth is he did. It says in the Pasuk, right, on the bottom of page Aleph, on the bottom left, where it says Yosher Rai, he says, Vayomer David LeShaul lo eshlach yadi badoni. I'm not going to send my hand against my master. Ki Mashiach Hashemhu. Because he's a Mashiach, he's anointed from Hashem. Remember that every king was anointed. So he's anointed by Hashem. Va'avi re'eh gam re'eh. The fact that sometimes we're calling the fact that he also used Adoni, but he said Adoni is my master, that's for the king, but then he also used Avi. So the fact that here, the way that he's learning is the fact that he also used Avi, not only Adoni, shows that you're obligated in your respect of your father-in-law, just like your father. Right? We will speak about afterwards about the people that they call their father-in-laws also by Abba Ve'ima. We'll speak about that B'ezrat Hashem, but just a few minutes. Okay? Fine. So that's the first thing. So one more time. We've got a mechilta that says from here a person should be fitting to come and to respect their father-in-law. We have the Likut Shimoni at the beginning saying that you're obligated to, but then it brings a machloket Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan. Is it Avi Rega? Who is Avi referring to? Is it actually Shaul? Or is it actually according to Rabbanan, Avner. And then we went and we started saying about different terminologies, what you usually use. So for a king, you would always use my master. And for a rabbi or your biological father, it's always my father. Something very, very interesting is the Rambam. The Rambam comes and he says, on page Bet, he comes and he says as follows, okay? A woman that comes and she's married and her parents pass away. So, says the Rambam, Eno mitabel ima al shar krovea, ela al avia val ima bilvad. So the only people that he has to show mourning for is not for any family members other than her parents. So that means if it's going to be a brother, a sister, no. The only one that she has to show respect for are her parents, avia ve'alima bilvad. But says Rambam, mishum kavod ishto, because of the kavod of his wife. He doesn't say it's because of the kavod of the father-in-law and the mother-in-law. He says kavod of his wife. So Rav Moshe Sternbach, which is the next one, he comes and he says, Data Rambam is that the ikar chiyuv of respecting your in-laws is because you have to respect your wife. And therefore he says that's the yesod of kibud chamiv according to the Rambam, right? And therefore if the wife is not going to benefit, or for example, after she dies, there's no more kavod. So for example, a person's wife passes away. He doesn't have anymore the obligation of respecting his in-laws, because there's not his in-laws anymore. The only reason is it was because it was an extension of his wife. We're going to speak about that, so just put that on hold. Put it on the back burner because we're going to speak about that a little bit more. Fine. We're going to go to the next one. The next one is going to be the Tur. The Tur, remember that what we just did is we went from the highest places of where we learned from the Midrashim and places like that to learn how to respect the in-laws. And now we're going towards the Tur and the Bet Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch and all these things. What do you have to do halacha l'maaseh? So the Tur just says, right, in the middle in Shtaim, in 2 Gimel, it says, in halacha kavbet, kavdalet, v'chayav lechabed chamiv, you're obligated to respect your father-in-law, because it says, avire gamre. So the Bach comes and he says, first, number 1, hu adin chamoto. The same halacha applies to the mother-in-law. Meaning it's not just the father-in-law, because remember, until here, we only spoke about the father-in-law, because the case of Moshe Rabbeinu was to the father-in-law. And he says, Mikan chamiv, right? And then the case also of David HaMelech was only to the father-in-law, right? What about the mother-in-law? So the first thing that the Bach tells you says, it's pashut, that it's selam imshos. It's the same halacha. Now we're going to explain later on why be'emet would there be a difference? Meaning, why would you think there's a difference in the father-in-law and the mother-in-law? Some people are going to say, listen. I can respect my father-in-law, but my mother-in-law? You're crazy. But we're going to see about in halacha. Is there really be'emet a difference or not between the father-in-law and the mother-in-law? Usually nowadays, the father-in-law is a nice guy. He's the one that always gives the money. The mother-in-law is sometimes a witch or whatever it is. But we're going to speak about it. 1 second. Okay, fine. Let's go. So the Bach comes and then he says something incredible. He brings down, obviously, right? He brings down what we were speaking about, which is going to be the lechabed kederech hazekeni. He comes and he says like this. He says that really be'emet, the Tur holds that you're not obligated to respect your in-laws like a real respect of, like your parents. He says, you know how you respect your in-laws? Like zekenim chashuvim. What does it mean, zekenim chashuvim? So that means even if they're going to be young, so for example, you could have people that are already 40s, and they have son-in-laws, right? Or even 50s. What's considered an elderly person? We know that the elderly person is usually after 70. After 70, they come in, you have to stand up for them, or you do hidur, things like that. After the age of 70s, right? Yashish v'nichbad, or zaken, right? Or zaken muflag, or all these things. The word zikna is usually at the age of 70. Zek shekana chokhma, or zikna, 70. You could have a young father-in-law, but the son-in-law is obligated to respect his father-in-law like a zaken chashuv, meaning like somebody that's chashuv. So therefore, we're going to speak about it like the zikenim, so standing up for them, and we'll speak about other things as well. Fine. So according to that, he comes and he says, that's the obligation to come and to respect them. So comes the Birkei Yosef, and he says like this, he says, what does it mean now that, how do we know that you're obligated to respect your in-laws? What does that mean? Like zikenim chashuvim. So the Birkei Yosef says beautifully like this. Even according to the rabbis that they said that the Avi was not referring to Shaul, it was referring to Avner, which was his father in Torah, they do agree that you have to respect them a certain sense. But the question is how much? Until where does it go, that respect? So therefore, it says that Rav Chida in the Birkei Yosef, so therefore you do have to give them some kavod. But how much? That's the question. Okay, so now, right, what we have is, right, the following question. Okay, there's going to be a Rav Yaakov Haim Sofer that he's going to speak about the Torah Tmima. The Torah Tmima is a chumash that basically it takes every pasuk, and on the bottom he's going to bring you down every Gemara that speaks about that pasuk. So, for example, if it's going to speak about this Gemara or things like that, so it's going to bring down a Gemara. This pasuk, on each pasuk is going to bring down a Gemara. So, what the Torah Tmima asks is, I don't understand. The Mechilta, which was the midrash on Shemot on Yitro, nobody argues. So therefore, if nobody argues, it's mashma it's a halacha. So how could the Bach come and he says, no, 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 you know what? It's only like zikenim. I don't understand. You know, you what? On a zaken, you have to bow down to them, right? You have to kiss them. Right now, I see an elderly person coming to the synagogue. I have to bow down? I don't have to bow down. There's halacha, I should stand up, right? Or even how much to stand up, but do I have to bow down? No. Do I have to kiss them? No. So therefore, obviously, I can't just say, you know what? By Moshe Rabbeinu to Yitro, it was like a zakenim. It was like a elderly people. Since when do you have to bow down to an elderly person? Since when do you have to kiss them? So obviously, there's something much deeper than that. So Rav Yaakov Chaim Sofer, the Zakav Chaim Sofer, he comes and he wants to answer, and he says like this. He says, really, be'emet, right? We already know, right, that really it was already a machloket in the midrash, as we already said, because one opinion said Avi referred to Shaul, another opinion said it referred to Avner. We know that after Girushin, right, after divorce, it's only out of derech eretz. Meaning, you have a couple, and they get divorced. So after they get divorced, there's only a derech eretz to respect her in-laws, or his in-laws, basically. So now, right, the Rav Chida comes and he says like this. He says, really, be'emet, maybe it's not halacha, right, that you have to respect your in-laws mamash like parents. But the Torah Tmima asks, since when do you have to respect elderly people? By bowing down to them or by kissing them? So he comes and he says, Moshe Rabbeinu was anav meod. He was very humble. He was an anav. Who else did the same thing? Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu bowed down to the Bnei Am Haaretz Livnechet. So therefore you see that bowing down to people which are chashuvim does not mean that they're your parents. So therefore, you cannot bring me a proof from Moshe Rabbeinu. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu came and he bowed down to him and he kissed him, that's a proof that it's not just like elderly people. It has to be like what? That it's a father-in-law and it's like your parents. It's not true. Avraham Avinu also did the same thing. He bowed down to elderly people. He bowed down to people to show respect. So showing respect is not a proof then, right, of what? That, it has to be like your father-in-law, like your father. Nothing to do with it. It doesn't have to be like that. And that's actually also nalacha because the shach brings down the bach that you only have to respect them like elderly people. That's all that you have to do. But there is a Gaon Vilna. The Gaon Vilna comes and he says like this. We know that the Gaon Vilna was traveling and he wanted to get to Eretz Yisrael and he never actually got there. And then he came back, but he wrote a letter. It's called the Igeret Gra, the letter of the Gra. Incredible letter. And in the middle there he comes and he says like this. V'gam bati levakesh mi'ishti. I'm asking for my wife. Shetechabed mi, respect my mother. Meaning he was taking off, and who was living by him? The mother-in-law, right? Meaning the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law. And he says, you have to respect my mother, kemo shekatuv b'Torah, like it's written in the Torah. Now, what does it mean it's written in the Torah? Meaning the Gaon was mashma, that really be'emet, it's like it's written in the Torah that you have to respect your in-laws, right? And then he says especially that she was an almanah, and so on and so forth. And then the Sefer Charedim says the same yesod. Sefer Charedim is also one of the, right, Rabbi Elazar Iskiri, right, that he comes and he says, the man and the woman, they're both obligated in the in-laws, and the reason why is because men and women, they become one when they get married. And since they become one when they get married, your parents are like her parents, and her parents are like your parents. So therefore, it's kilu that the kibud ava'em goes now on both of them. Because kilu, you're one entity. And even more so, you remember last week we said a chidush, an incredible chidush, that a woman would be more obligated in the respect of her in-laws than maybe even of her parents, or for sure more of the other in-laws, right? Meaning of the husband to their in-laws. So there's a Tana Deve Eliyahu. Tana Deve Eliyahu is Eliyahu Navi Zechulatov. I'm on page 4, Daled, like Aleph. There's a Sefer Charedim, and there's an underline where it says as follows: Tana Deve Eliyahu. Eliyahu Navi Zechulatov came and he taught, Kabed et avicha v'et imecha, and immediately right afterwards, what it's written, Lo tinaf. Meaning, the 5th commandment in the Torah is respect your parents. The sixth one, which is on the top, what's that? What's that? Lotinaf, don't commit adultery. What is the connection? Honoring your parents, adultery. What's the connection? Im nasa adam isha v'hiena mechabed et aviv v'imo bet ziknatan. If a man gets married and his wife is not respecting his parents when they become elderly, hareu ki'ilu no'ef kol yamav. It's ki'ilu he's committing adultery his entire life. Meaning that the fact that his wife is not respecting his parents is ki'ilu he's committing adultery. Because the bond has to be so strong between a husband and a wife that she's obligated to respect your parents. And if she's not respecting your parents, it's kilu you're going with another woman. It's lotinaf, you're committing adultery. Because how could it be that you're married to a woman and she's not respecting your parents? That's Tana de Veliau, right? So it's on you because you have the obligation to make sure that your wife is fulfilling her duties of respecting your parents. Okay? So now we're going to ask a following question. I think we did ask this question last week, but we're going to ask the following question. We said like this: if right now your father and your mother asks you to bring them a glass of water, father, mother, who do you listen to? We said father. Why? So people last night also, they made the same mistake right away. It says, you have to respect your father first. I told them it's not true. Because it says, Ish imo ve'aviv tirau. You have to fear your mother. So the Torah actually brings down, and Rashi brings it on both places. Why does it choose this place, the father before the mother? Your father and then your mother. And by the fear, it says, Ish imo ve'aviv tirau. A person has to fear his mother and his father. Why does it switch? Like, what's going on? So the Torah actually says, and this is what's written, the Chachamim, they explain it, is that a person naturally respects his mother more than his father, and he naturally fears his father more than his mother. Meaning, what to do with fear, who are you more afraid of? Your father. The mother's more there, but when your father takes off the belt, you're in trouble. You understand? I mean, you're afraid. You're afraid of your father more than your mother. So therefore, because of that, by fear, the Torah purposely put the mother first to show you also have to fear your mother. To do with kavod, you're always the mother's always the one that's giving love. So therefore, what happens? You're naturally going to want to give more kavod to your mother. So therefore, the Torah says kabedat avicha. First, you have to give the father and then the mother. However, though, so it's not because of the Torah, but it tells you that they're both equal. Okay. But what the Torah says is as follows. This is the Gemara Masechet Kiddushin says the father and the mother ask you for a glass of water, and it's at the exact same time. So who do you give first? Says the Gemara, your father. Why your father? Because your mother is also obligated to respect her husband. So therefore, since the mother is obligated to respect her husband, and you're obligated to respect your father, so it all goes like this to the father. However, though, what happens if they're divorced? If they're divorced, they're not obligated to respect the husband. So therefore, you choose which one. Because they're both equal. Once they're equal and nobody's in the middle there, so therefore, it's like this, both equal, you decide which one. Okay, fine. But what did we say? One more time. If it's the father, if they're married and the father and the mother, you have to give to the father. Why the father? Because the mother is also obligated to the father. Says the rabbis, one second. I've got a question, right? If you're going to tell me right now that if you've got also a double thing, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, right? Is a man obligated to respect his father-in-law? Until now, what we just said, yes. The question is, if it's going to be zikanim and everything, fine. But if you're going to tell me it's mamash 100% like the parents, so now I have a question, right? You ask something from your wife, and your father-in-law asks something from your wife. Who should she listen to? So now the Gemara Mefureshet says that she's exempt from kibud avayim because of her husband. Because a woman is subjugated to her husband, so therefore she's p'tura from kibud avayim. But we have a question. Why? If the son-in-law is obligated in the mitzvah of the in-laws like parents, so therefore the wife now has her husband and she has her father-in-law, her parents. Now the husband is also obligated to the parents. So therefore, why do you say that the wife is exempt from kibud avayim if you yourself are also obligated in the kibud of chamiv? So therefore, it goes back to the same case of before as the father and the mother and the son. Who do you give first? The father, because the wife is also obligated to the father. So to here, you're meaning her husband is also obligated to her parents. So therefore, she's obligated to her parents. Her husband's obligated to her parents. So why do you say she's ptura from kibud avim? She should be obligated to do her kibud avim, and kibud avim for her should go even before the husband. That's the question. It's a bomb question to understand what's going on. So the way that we answered it last week was beautiful, and we said there's a huge difference. We said as follows: the woman, right, is subjugated to her husband, but it's not the same as the son-in-law to the father-in-law. Why? In every mitzvah of kibud avayim, there's two mitzvot. There's a mitzvah to do it, and then there's a chovah, there's a subjugation, shiabud. You're obligated to your parents. You are obligated to that. So therefore, here, when a woman comes and she gets married, she's subjugated to her husband, but he's not subjugated to his in-laws. He only has a mitzvah to respect his in-laws. So even if you're going to tell me that he's 100% obligated to respect his in-laws, it's not a subjugation. So since it's not a subjugation, that's why she's ptura from kibud avayim, because she only has to respect her husband comes before her parents. However, though, right, that's one answer. So one more time, the answer is very, very simple. There's two parts of every mitzvah. There's a mitzvah to fulfill the words of your parents, and then there's a chovah to fulfill the words of your parents. So by a child, you have both of them to your parents. By a son-in-law, you only have one. You only have the mitzvah. You don't have the subjugation. So, and the wife has the subjugation to her husband. So because of that, in the case of the father and the mother asking for a cup of water, the son has to give it to the father because he's got both to his father, and the wife has a subjugation to her husband. So therefore, it all channels towards the father. To do with the father-in-law, you only have a mitzvah to give to your father-in-law, but you don't have the subjugation. She has the subjugation, so therefore it does not go to the father-in-law. She goes to you. We'll see how she has the subjugation to you as well. So therefore, that's why she's going to be turami kibud avayim. That's the first answer. The second answer, if you're only going to tell me that it's only respect like elderly people, so therefore the question doesn't start, because it's only the question if it's you have to respect them like parents. But if you have to respect them like elderly people, there's no doubt in the world that if you have an elderly person here in the room and your wife is going to serve somebody, she's not going to serve her husband, she's going to serve the elderly person. There's no doubt in the world. She's going to serve her husband. So obviously that's what you're going to be doing. So two answers to answer up why does the Gemara say that a person is not going to, meaning a woman is ptura from kibud avayim, like what we just answered until now. Okay, until here we're clear? Okay, fine. Now we're going to speak about what type of kavod then do you have to give to your in-laws then? If you're going to tell me, so therefore, the Shubin Lam and also Yechavedat, we'll go straight to the Yechavedat. Basically what they say is that when they get within your Daled Amot, this is on page 5b, like Bet, right? It's the Yechavedat. Yechavedat is obviously Rav Ovadia Yosef. He comes and he says, because he asks, what is the kavod you have to give to your in-laws? And he says, when you're going to come within the Daled Amot, you have to stand up for them, just like you stand up for Zekenim Hashuvim. And then he brings down a minhag, lenashek yedeh chamiv derech kavod vikar. You should even come and kiss your father-in-law's hand, derech kavod as well. So it's not only just coming, right, and standing up for them, kissing their hand. So last night they were joking around that the father-in-law is going to go out from now on just like this, as if, the son-in-law should come and kiss his hand. But fine, okay, but that's the Rav Ovadia Yosef, it's a minhag. However, though, he comes and now he says the thing which is very difficult for women to swallow, right? Which is that a woman is obligated to respect her in-laws, right? Kimetav yecholta. And then he comes and he says, and kol sheken, it's even more so, because we brought down, if you remember, that it was even greater than the other one. Why? Because that's also the kavod of her husband. Meaning, when she comes and she respects her in-laws, she's fulfilling the kavod of her husband. And since she's fulfilling the kavod of her husband, she has a greater obligation to respect her in-laws than what he has for his in-laws, right? Because she's got also the kavod of the ba'ala. So therefore, he comes and he says the kibud umurah shel chamim v'chamotah is like the kavod umurah shel ba'ala, and that's also brought down in the Pirkei Yosef. So therefore, one more time, you have the one obligation when they come in within when they come within your daled amot, within the a little bit less than 2 meters, you stand up, and it should be melok kamato. Melok kamato means completely standing up, just like a parent. Meaning, when a parent walks into a room, it's not just enough to do this. You have to stand up completely, right? Stand up, completely stand up. The same thing. The only difference between a parent and the in-laws is that the parent is the second that you see them come into the room, and you're not allowed to sit down until they tell you to sit down. The in-laws is once they get within your daled amot. So once you get within your Daled Amot, within your 1.92 meters, that's when you're going to come and you're going to sit down. You remember that we came and we asked a very, very interesting question. Does it only apply to the father-in-law or also the mother-in-law? So where does it come from? So they come and they say that they were medaktek because since everywhere it kept on saying, right, the chamiv, so is it only chamiv or also chamoto, right? So they wanted to say that 1 second, if you're going to tell me that it's the charedim, like according to the charedim or the Galmi Vina, that it's from the Torah, so it's the same thing. What's the difference between the father-in-law and the mother-in-law? But if you're going to tell me it's like the zekenim chashuvim, like elderly people, so then it's only going to be the father-in-law. Now, why? Not the mother-in-law. Why? Because you would only be obligated to stand up for a zaken. Are you obligated to also stand up for a zikina? Meaning, we know that when an elderly person walks in, we stand up. If it's a woman, do we stand up? So it's not that simple. There's actually going to be huge machlokot. Are you obligated to stand up for an elderly woman? Some people say here, there's a sefer called V'adatta Pnei Zaken. He comes and he says, right, Chayavim lakum lifnei eshet chaver ve'eshet zekena. You're obligated to come and to stand up in front of an eshet chaver and eshet zekena. But why? Because basically they say that they understood when it says anashim zekenim chashuvim, it meant like chachamim. So now the question is, are you obligated to stand up for a rabbi's wife or for an elderly woman? So this sefer comes and he brings down that by a rabbi's wife, it's a Gemara Mefureshet, that you would have to stand up. The only difference is that during the rabbi's lifetime, it's Doraita, right? Because of Kavod Bala. And after he passes away, it's only the Rabbanan or Midat Chasidut. But the Sefer Chasidim brings down that you're obligated to stand up also for a rabbi's wife, for a rabbitzin, a rabbanit, and, right, any rabbanit, right, and Isha Zekena. So now the question is, right, what's going on then? So there was a Rav Chida that he says that you don't have to stand up for a rabbi's wife. And the Ben Ish Chai argued on that. But the Ben Ish Chai went and he said, what are you talking about? In the Kilu, the Rav Chida quoted Arizal HaKadosh. He says it's not true, that you do have to. And it's actually, I'm going to give you an incredible chidush. Listen to this chidush. He brings down here the machloket, are you obligated to stand up for a rabbi's wife or not? The majority of the people say yes. Even the Chavetz Chaim stood up when the wife of the Birkat Shmuel came into him. Rav Eliashiv held yes. The Shevet Levi said yes. The Rav Wosner, the Minchat Chinuch, the Taz, the Rishonim, the Gemara. Okay, fine. The Rav Chida is basically alone in this, and he says no, and he quotes Arizal HaKadosh. The Ben Ish Chai argues on him, and the Ben Ish Chai comes and he says, he actually brings Al Pia Kabbalah, why do you have to stand up for a rabbi's wife? But he comes and he says like this, the rabbi's wife is so chamur, right, that it's even more strict than standing up for the rabbi. Why? Because the rabbi could be mochel al kvodo. A rabbi could come and say, you know what, I forgive you, you don't have to stand up. The eshet chaver, the wife of a rabbi, she can't forgive. Why? Because it's not because of her. It's because of her husband. So therefore, she can't even forgive you that you don't have to stand up for her. And now even the husband cannot be mochel because she was zocha in the kavod. So the only way to be mochel is you need mechila from both the rabbi and the rabbi's wife. If you don't have both of them to be mochel on the kavod, you still have to stand up. Right? This is brought down in the shiureh, the Grish. This is in the kiddushin. They bring down this yisod. And then he comes and he says even more that you have to stand up for the rabbi's wife even after the death of her husband. That's brought down the Taz. But if she gets married again, right? If it's going to be to a Rama'aretz, which is not a rabbi, you don't have to respect her anymore because now she lost her title, kilu. Right? So that's actually brought down. But they actually did try to answer up the Rav Chida that the way of the understanding of the Rav Chida is that the Rav Chida says that we don't know who's the rabbi's wives. Like, many times you have Rosh Yeshivas, and you don't know this is the wife of the Rosh Yeshiva. So therefore, he was saying that's kilu patur, that you don't know. But if you already do know who's your rabbi's wife or so you're obligated to because that's an obligation. So therefore, the reason to differentiate between the mother-in-law is if you're going to come and you're going to tell me they have to respect your father-in-law, your in-laws like zikenim chashuvim, you don't have to stand up for an elderly woman according to a lot of shitot. So therefore, you don't have to give that kavod to your mother-in-law. But the majority of the opinions, they do say that you're obligated to, and there's nothing what to talk about. Okay, fine. But according to everybody, doesn't matter how you learn, your father comes before your father-in-law. So there was a custom. Listen to this custom. For example, you have a child. Who do you call first? So there is going to be a difference in custom between Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. Sfaradim always give it to the father first, and Ashkenazim always give it to the mother first. So when they asked of Chaim Kanievsky, 1 second, but you have the obligation to respect your father before your father-in-law. So how do you give the first child, right, or the sandak or the thing to the wife? So the answer what that he gave is that since there was a minhag by Ashkenazim that was already based upon Rishonim, that the wife gets first. Part of the reason was because since she was the one that was suffering, she had the labor, the birth, the this, the that. So therefore, they gave her kilu the kavod first. So therefore, when he got married, it was already kilu an accepted practice that he has to do, and therefore he's going to give to the father-in-law even before his own father. But usually, your father will always come before your father-in-law, right? The respect of your father always comes before the respect of your father-in-law. There was an incredible question, though, because of this concept of minagim. Ashkenazim, they don't call by the living. So there was a person that his mother and his mother-in-law had the same name. Now, again, it's only not good to have the wife and his mother. But if it's the two mother-in-laws, what's the problem? So there were the two mother-in-laws had the same name. Okay? Meaning his mother and his mother-in-law. His mother passed away. And now they have a girl. He wants to call his mother. Now the mother-in-law is going crazy because it's the same name. And the mother-in-law is still alive. So she doesn't want. So the wife is fighting with the husband. No. Says Reb Chaim, they say that this is brought down in a shoot, Chelkat Yaakov. She's correct. At the beginning, he wanted to say that really, Be'emet, the husband should have all the rights because the second a child is born, he's obligated to support him, and na. But at the end, he comes and he says, 1 second, there's a custom. And once there was a custom not to name after the living, and therefore when you got married, you accepted upon yourself that custom was your Ashkenazi, basically, and therefore you're not going to call after the living, and therefore, even though you have an obligation to respect your mother, you don't do it, right? You're not supposed to do it. Fine. Okay. Next. What about after death? So after death, there is an inyan also to respect the in-laws after they pass away, not the wife. Remember, after the wife passes away, he's exempt. But after they pass away, there's a concept to respect them. The Pele Yoet says the same is sold by the parents. You remember we once brought this down in Kibud Avayim that there's a Zohar Kadosh, and the Zohar Kadosh says the Ikar. Where I'm on page 8b, 8bet, where it says Eliezer Papo, the Pele Yoetz. He comes and he says something incredible. Ikar mitzvah of Kibud Avayim is after death. Because that's when you're able to come and to give them nachat ruach and everything when you do all these mitzvot. So therefore, just like by the parents, the ikar mitzvah of kibud avayim is after death, so too the ikar mitzvah of kibud avayim, of kibud of chamiv, of the father-in-law and mother-in-law, is after death. So therefore, even after death, you're obligated to come and to respect the in-laws, right, with no questions asked whatsoever. So one of the people in my shiur, they went and they said, yeah, his wife always says about the mother-in-law, about this, always saying these different things. So again, this is the kar kavod comes even after death. There is going to be a machloket. What about kaddish? Why? The Stechemed on the bottom of the page, he brings a machloket. Some people say that he doesn't say kaddish, the son-in-law, for the in-laws. And the reason why, as he says, is because there it has nothing to do with kavod, it has to do with zechuyot. Because the Gemara says, Bera, the child is mizakeh, his father, or mizakeh, his mother. Remember, it says that the child is like the legs of the parents. The legs is the only part of the body that brings you up and down. You could bend down your knees and you stand up and that. That's only the legs. So because of that, the child is called the legs, the extension of his parents, because he could bring them up and down in Gan Eden. So therefore, when he says Kaddish, it helps him out. He says, and then do with the kavod, it has to do with the zechuyot. So they want to say that a son-in-law does not have a zechuyot. So they say that if there's a brother to the deceased, meaning that the person that passed away has a brother, he would come before the son-in-law. But if there's no brothers, right, and there's no boys, and there's only the girls, so therefore it would be an obligation, obviously, for the son-in-law to come and to do it. We did mention, right, a Rambam. You remember we brought down that the Rambam said the reason why you're obligated to come and respect your in-laws is because of the kavod of your wife. So I'm just going to give you the yisod right outside, just because we're getting late, and I'll give you something incredible. A lot of Rishonim didn't even bring down the halakha, you have to respect your in-laws. Why not? But the Shulchan Aruch did, and he skipped out all the time when it was written because of your wife. The reason why is it was a fundamental machloke between the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch. The Rambam held the only reason why you're obligated to respect your in-laws is because it's an extension of your wife. Meaning you have to respect your wife. So you have to respect your in-laws. So therefore they didn't bring down the in-laws as a different halakha. It's all part of your wife. Obviously, if you get divorced or if she dies, that all flies away. There's nothing there. But according to Shulchan Aruch, he learned it as a different halakha. It's halakha bifnei atzma. That's why he had to write it separately. That there was halakha that you have to come and you have to respect your in-laws. I'm going to bring you down halakha l'maaseh from Yalkut Yosef. There's the Sikum Alachot is brought down. This is on page Yud Aleph where he comes and he says like this: a person is obligated to respect his in-laws, right? And even if, right, the how do you call this? So therefore you have to stand up for them, and even if he's very young, your father-in-law, you still have to stand up for him. There's a minhag to kiss his hands. Kol sheken if he's going to be a Tamid Chacham or if he's going to be a Kohen, obviously that's where we get to the Kohen. That there's a bigger mitzvah also to respect them because of the Tamid Chacham or the Kohen. If the chatan is a Tamid Chacham and the father-in-law is a regular balabait, so then he doesn't have to stand up completely. He does hidur. He just goes like this a little bit, and that's it. Okay, fine. He does not have to respect the mother-in-law, which is not his wife's mother. So, for example, let's say the mother-in-law passed away, and now the father-in-law comes and remarries. Since that's not his wife's real mother, so he doesn't have to really respect her. Okay. Now it's proper also not to call them by their first names, because even by zikenim chashuvim, and that's the way he's paskening, by the way, that you only have to respect them like zikenim chashuvim. He comes and he says you shouldn't call them by their first names. You always call them monsieur or madame or the senor or don, like all these different things that beforehand, Mister, whatever it is. You don't just start calling people by their first name. So you have to do the same thing. Some people have a minhag of calling them Abba ve'ima, just like David HaMelech did. If you want, you could do that. But for sure, you shouldn't say Abba Mare, like Avi Mori, because that for sure is only for a parent, and you shouldn't start coming and giving it to other people. Okay? There was actually a saying that they used to say, Madre es madre, y la demás es aire. Meaning your mother is always your mother. Everything else is just the wind. You know what I mean? That there's certain things that for sure you have to be very, very careful. Therefore, you should actually ask your parents if they're okay that you call your in-laws by father or mother, or you could call them a different name. For your example, your parents are papa and mommy or whatever, and then your thing is like dad and mom or things like that. That's a different name that it's not really showing who they are. He does bring down the Yakud Yosef Dalacha that obviously a woman is more obligated than the man is obligated to. He then brings down that even if they're causing you suffering, you should still respect them, and that we learn from David HaMelech, right? Even if he's going to be an amaretz, you're still obligated to respect him, unless he's a bal averot and a avaryan, meaning a person that's completely going against Torah mitzvot, then you don't need to. If there's going to be fights between them, obviously you have to be very, very careful, right, in order to keep the peace in the house and with your wife and everything else. Even after, right, they pass away, you should still respect them. And again, obviously, your parents come before your in-laws, and a person is obligated, even if his wife is not there, he's still obligated to respect the in-laws, and obviously that's what we brought down until now. Okay, there is going to be then the last halacha is, and that's what we're not going to have time to do it today, but another maybe another time is then okay. So then how do we do it with different types of kavod, of whether it's going to be of how do you make them feel? Right? And halakha l'maaseh, if you have them in your house. So we're going to speak about next time, bli neder, whether it's going to be who does the wife serve first, right? Is it her husband? Is it her parents? Is it his parents? Who does the granddaughter serve first? Is it her father? Is it her grandfather mitzad the father, grandfather mitzad the mother? So all these halachot bli neder we'll speak about, right? Bezat Hashem at another time.